The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
Good afternoon, and welcome to today's special edition of In Focus, presented as part of the 41st anniversary of St. Kitts and Nevis' independence, a special edition dubbed Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. I am your host, Kylone Johnson, and it is my privilege to guide you through what promises to be an impactful and inspiring conversation on youth empowerment and leadership. Today's topic, Youthquake, Empowering Tomorrow's Leaders, centers on the critical role young people play in shaping the future of our country and indeed of our region. Youth empowerment is more than just about providing opportunities. It is about equipping young people with the skills, resources, and confidence they need to drive innovation, civic engagement, and sustainable development. With the majority of our population under the age of 30, youth hold the key to tackling many of the pressing issues here in St. Kitts and Nevis that we face today, from climate change to economic inequality. Our esteemed guests will provide their unique insights on how we can better harness this potential to secure a better future for all. Joining us in this conversation are Janelle Tafari, Muriel and Patrice Harris. Together, we will explore solutions to the most pressing issues affecting youth today, including unemployment, access to education, and mental health, and discuss how St. Kitts and Nevis can cultivate a stronger youth empowerment agenda. Thanks for joining us in this conversation as we reflect on our path forward to empower the next generation of leaders. Let's get started. Now, the first question I will have to ask is, what is your understanding of youth empowerment? What does it mean to you guys? I'll start with our most distinguished guest, Mr. Tafari.
Good afternoon, everyone. Youth empowerment. We hear the word empowerment so often, it has become somewhat cliche. What does it mean? And you gave a wonderful description earlier in your introduction. It means that you work with somebody, you mentor somebody so that they are able to step out on their own. They can achieve their full potential. So you're going to harness their strengths, their capabilities, help them to work on their weaknesses and overcome whatever challenges they have so that they can put the best self forward and that they can be active participants in every field, every sphere of life, every asset of our community.
Muriel, as one of our younger panelists, do you have a different perspective on?
No, I think my perspective is generally the same as Mr. Tafari, but just to add that youth empowerment also has to include equipping young people, not just to lead, but to have that active role, as she said, within the society and within their lives and within their schools and their community, so that not only do they feel a part of the community, but they are then feeling ready to take up the role that may be assigned to them later on as they create their impact on the Federation. And in addition to that, it's ensuring that young people have that voice so that they know that they matter and they know that their opinions matter when it's needed most, and even in the general day-to-day runnings of affairs.
And do you think there are enough platforms for young people to have that voice?
I think there are platforms that do exist, but I think better work has to be done in connecting young people to those platforms, and again, in empowering young people to create their own platforms where they see a gap that exists.
Okay. As we talk about an empowerment, a youth empowerment agenda, how can we develop that here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
I think we're very much on our way to ensuring that youth empowerment goes beyond just equipping our young persons with the skills. What I can see is that we're finally a lot closer to getting it right. Back in the days when I would have been a part of these youth organizations, when we were being encouraged to constantly have a voice, share your opinion, they didn't always necessarily translate into opportunities being available for young people. What we see now is that these opportunities are becoming more and more available. It is easier to visualize it because we actually see many young persons taking up these spaces, especially within the public sector. We have a lot of young PSs, we have a lot of young directors, and the icing on the cake is that we have very young ministers as well. So we have gone beyond actually saying, hey, you can do it, but hey, look at it here. So they can actually feel beyond inspired. We can recognize that this is something that can truly happen. So we are closer to the adjournment on the agenda because we are finally closer to getting it done right.
And I concur with what Patrice has said. So we've moved beyond the mere tokenism,
yes,
where we tick off that checkbox and say, okay, we're having a function, we need 10% of young people to be there for them to participate, and then that's it. We're now allowing the younger persons to actually not just have a voice, but to be a part of the planning and the implementation of whatever strategies, programs, to run organizations, be a part on the boards, the committees, etc. Their voice matters, and they do bring to the table some creativity, some passion, some new ideas, things that, different perspectives that the older population just would not think about.
Most definitely.
And we need that if we are going to continue moving forward in St. Kitts.
And in your guys' opinions, have you seen this participation among the youth being translated into basically a better St. Kitts and Nevis so far?
I think so. When you look across the sector, sports, youth empowerment, and even business, you see that young people are taking that active role. And I think what has helped is the shifting of mindsets that young people aren't necessarily there to replace, but we're there to enhance. Yes. Because as you broaden the spectrum of people who are involved in these thinking and these planning, you allow yourself to have such a greater pool of ideas that you can only make it better.
I do believe that we have some work to do as it relates to reaching out to our at-risk and vulnerable populations. Even back in the time when I was involved in youth organizations, that was something that I struggled with tremendously. How do I reach out to the young people, or the organization that is, reach out to young people who are traditionally marginalized, young people who are in rural areas, young people who might not be as articulate and as educated as my peers, because they might not feel as though this space is a place where they need to be. We have a lot of work to be able to do in order to get that group of young people. Yes, we have done certain things right because we have all of these persons in leadership who are young people, but when it comes to zeroing in on that target group, I think we are missing the mark a lot.
Okay, so as you said, we still have some work to do.
Yes, we have some work to do.
Okay. Education. I know education plays an important role in most things in life. How big of a role does it play in empowering our youth in St. Kitts and Nevis and in the Caribbean, really?
Well, there's the academic aspect, which unfortunately we tend to place too much emphasis on. So I'm very happy to hear the Ministry of Education speaking now about other aspects, a holistic approach to education, teaching our students to be good citizens. So it's not getting the 12, 13 CXC subjects, it's well and good. But we want to make sure, or they want to make sure, that when these students leave the classroom, they're able to be polite, they're able to what the young people call it, to adult. To manage your households, manage your family. They have the values, they have the morals that will help them to not only be better individuals, but to promote our society to be one that builds better families and communities. So it's about education helps not just for the academics of preparing you for the world of work, but also to be a better person, a better citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis and globally.
Yes.
Because in the 21st century, we can't limit our young people.
There are no borders. There are no borders.
Yes. We cannot discount the importance of education at all. There can never be any conversation about youth empowerment without education. Education is crucial. It is critical. It is that tool that we're going to use to have continuous development. When we consider the amount of exposure that a young person gains through education and then they're able to return to St. Kitts or remain in St. Kitts, doesn't mean you have to leave, to be able to contribute to national development. It's very important. When you look at the different component sectors of society and the economy where we need specialized skills, that cannot happen without education. There has been a lot of emphasis placed on the importance of getting a master's degree or getting a bachelor's degree. Everybody wants a master's and a bachelor's degree. They're useful, they allow you to earn a lot more money and to be able to get certain positions, but even the basic understanding of completing high school education. After high school, what do I do next? Can I pick up a skill? Because trust me, when it comes to certain specializations and skills, we are woefully lacking, and we need young persons to be able to be brave, take up these opportunities. I recognize that the government is offering a lot more scholarships into a lot of different places. Once ago, Taiwan was far, but we're now looking at far places. I think there was Morocco. There are tons of different scholarships. So we have to be able to encourage our young persons. Yes, you want to be an influencer, fine. But consider education as well. It's always a very good baseline in terms of getting opportunities, but not to have an over-reliance on education in terms of formal academic qualifications, because I think sometimes we get them skewed that, oh, you didn't get a degree, so you're not as useful as somebody else who has that. And I'm very cautious as to how I approach this topic, because I recognize the positions that I sit from. But I want persons to not discount the importance of attaining your educational and your academic qualifications, because it is the baseline for success.
Okay. Great. Now, as our theme suggests, Youthquake. When you guys say Youthquake, what do you think? Well, what do you think when you hear the word Youthquake? And is this the direction we need to be going as St. Kitts and Nevis continues to transform and modernize?
What comes to mind first is a paradigm shift, a shift in the norm, a shift in just doing something because this is how it's been done. A complete revolution in our thinking and our ways of developing our society. And it is definitely a place that we need to get to, because I've always said that we can't move forward as a country if we are all operating in silos. We have to move forward together with one idea, one agenda. We may have different thought processes of how to get there, but we have to be moving in that same direction. And I think if we don't have everyone at the table, then we're not heading there. And I think through youth empowerment and through that collective action of bringing young people to that decision-making table, we are moving towards that direction.
When I thought of Youthquake, there was a lot that came to mind. I visualized like a volcanic eruption. I don't know why that is what I visualized, but that is what I visualized. There are lots of myths as to how we are to incorporate young people into overall national development. We have to recognize that these young persons are from different generations. So as much as I still consider myself a young person, when Kailoni started and he said majority of the population is under 30, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer there. I am older than, I'm just 30 plus 1, so maybe y'all might accept me. So, but we have to come to the realization that young people alone cannot do it. And I know within a lot of circles and within a lot of spheres, there is a lot of animosity towards young people who are educated, who are brilliant, and who want to be able to carry their country forward. And there's also this great sense that these young people are so entitled, so they want it and they want it now. From my different opportunities and the different organizations that I am a part of, I can say to you that the young people alone cannot do it. The generations that came before us have to extend their hands backward to assist the young persons who are coming. We have to start to think about transitioning. We have to start to think about legacy. How does it get done? It's like saying somebody is on vacation and the work stays there until that person comes back from vacation. That transitioning needs to happen because the young people have to be appropriately placed and positioned with the assistance, the technical knowledge, and the know-how of the generations that came before them. So if there's any young person out there putting up his or her hand like, hey, I can do it all by myself, I totally will discredit that. Because you need the assistance of the persons that came before you, because experience is one of the greatest teachers. Yes, we might have the most innovative ways. Yes, we might have very different ways of thinking, and we can contribute to that paradigm shift, but it cannot be done alone. Young people alone cannot do it. So when we have this conversation about Youthquake, when we have this conversation about where young people are in this overall shift that we're trying to facilitate, we have to recognize that it is just not one generation that can do it.
Okay. You guys spoke of different areas, particularly in the decision-making process where more young voices are now being heard. But are there any areas where you think more voices from the young people need to rise up? Are there any sector, any avenue where you think youth that we need to speak up more?
Every area. I particularly believe that a few years ago we would have seen the reintroduction of student bodies or student councils throughout almost all of the high schools and primary schools in St. Kitts and Nevis. And this initiative would have encouraged young persons to very simply become involved in the political and democratic process of St. Kitts and Nevis. Understand, hey, I want to run, I have to campaign, I have to get my vote, I have to encourage persons to vote for me, then I actually get to vote. This is a part of the civic engagement that you want for young people. Civic engagement in St. Kitts and Nevis, in my estimation, is at an all-time low. I certainly believe that there is this culture that is being created. What is in it for me? As a person who has volunteered in so many things for all of my life and I still can't get away from volunteer initiatives, that should never be the practice of persons, because there's personal development that you can gain from these types of organizations. So yes, more young persons need to get involved and be courageous enough to speak out about issues that face them. And if it doesn't necessarily challenge you at this particular moment, it can have an impact on you in the near future. So we have to encourage our young persons to speak. We have to, as Muriel mentioned before, give them the platforms that are necessary. Invite them into the consultations, write the organizations and ask them, what is your input? Because we can't just continue to have the conversations without the involvement of young people.
And building on what Patrice said, she mentioned at-risk youth earlier.
Yes.
And if we're going to encourage these particular youth to speak, give them a platform, we need to sometimes think outside of the box. They may not want to join the organizations or come to the consultations. They may feel a bit intimidated, they may feel it's not for me, for whatever reason, they would not come. So we have to find other ways and means to allow us to hear their voice. And one of the ways I think we can do that is probably through the creative arts and using technology as a way to get them to speak up and speak out. For example, we have young persons who may do poetry, or through their music, they may write a song, they may do a performance somewhere. And we may just think it's entertainment, but for them, it's them telling us in their own way what they're feeling, what their ideas are, what their input is to our problems that we face.
Okay. Now, for a very interesting question. What are the most challenging issues affecting young people today? I'll keep it to St. Kitts and Nevis.
Well, the global one, let me back global and then bring it back. Globally, of course, we cannot not mention climate change, because at the pace that climate is changing around the world, we are looking at a definite change in how we live and how we go about our daily lives, not even in the distant future, but in the next 10 to 20 years, so much can change. And when we look at how many islands around the world, similar to St. Kitts and Nevis, that are now threatened by rising sea levels and that are threatened by larger countries that continue to impact us so negatively with their carbon emissions, we have to begin looking at strategies for how we can, even as small island states, carve our voice on the global stage as it relates to climate change. But bringing it back home, I would think one primary issue may be unemployment, and not necessarily the fact that there are not jobs, but there's this gap that a lot of young people go through, whether it is when they leave high school or when they leave college, where they're still questioning what they want to do, when they're questioning, where do I fit into this picture? They've now gone through 12, 13 years of schooling, going to school every morning, and now they get up as graduates. What do I do? I think we need to, as a nation, work to bridge that gap. And so whether it is through national internship programs or whether it is through skill training, we have to find a way to not lose people, because we have the potential to miss out opportunities of fully utilizing those young people. And if we do lose them, we then see ourselves falling to other issues and national social ills. So I think bridging that gap could be a start to one of the issues that young people face.
I definitely agree with the point about climate change. I believe that it is more so a large or regional and local issue, because you started from saying from a global perspective. One of the things that we have to recognize is that these last two generations, being the Gen Z and the millennial generation, they will be more inclined to have an understanding as to what climate change is and the implications of climate change, because this is the language that they understand. So they understand about turning off the tap, conserving water, conserving electricity, and also because they're living a lot of these realities, scarcity of water, very intense climatic conditions that can retard the growth of a country for a significant number of years. So you might find that these younger persons are more in tune with recycling. They might be more in tune with anything that has to do with how do we combat the impacts of climate change, more so than the generations that came before. But it is more so the difficulty of these two present generations, because we are the ones who are going to have to live with the impact of climate change for a longer period of time. Unfortunately, those generations would have already lived the majority of their lives already. So we are now looking forward to living the majority of our lives as well. But in a time where resources are extremely scarce, lower rainfall, very intense hurricanes, the moving up of the intensity of the hurricane period, even the sargassum that goes onto our into coastal lines has an impact. So they can see that reality even more. So you find that there is a lot more climate consciousness from these last two generations. When we speak about unemployment as well, that is one of the major issues that young people face. And it's not just so much about being able to get a job, but getting a job that is related to what their specific interests and qualifications will match. So for example, you might have a lot of underemployment because people just want to get a job. I think it is extremely difficult having return from university to be able to get a job. It's much harder from that perspective, as opposed to somebody who just leaves CFBC, and they both have difficulties getting jobs. So it's about creating the opportunities, not only for our young persons to be better able to get jobs, but to support them if they want to move towards entrepreneurship. I find that our young people are very entrepreneurial, they're very non-traditional, and we have to harness that, where the programs have to be put in place and the necessary support so that we can see the success and we can move away from thinking, I need to get a job, into being a lot more entrepreneurial. But I definitely know that when you're an entrepreneur, you work twice as hard than if you actually worked for someone. So I guess I have to make sure put that plug there for young people, that you have to work twice as hard when you're an entrepreneur than when you work for someone.
Steph, I think you had a...
Yeah, from our discussions at the ministry with young persons, there seems to be a disconnect between young persons' expectations of the world of work and the actual world of work. We would have done a meeting once with a group of young persons, and the question was asked about their employment, if they enjoy work. 100% of the young persons said no.
Generally,
they were not happy, they were not satisfied.
If they enjoyed work as well, they will also be no.
It was not what they wanted to do. A lot of them would tell you that they didn't feel they were exposed to a wide range of options for their careers. We still tend to push the traditional careers, the lawyers, the doctors, the bankers, and the young people are saying to us that it's only when they go out further afield from St. Kitts and Nevis or through social media, they learn of all these other areas that they can be gainfully employed or become entrepreneurs in. And for some of these young persons, they would have already committed to doing a degree in a certain area, the accounts, the economics, the business studies, etc. So they now are burdened with the student loan, so they can't really change careers. Yes, so that is one of the challenges that we've been getting back from our Department of Youth, from young people.
So that creation of the Department of Creative Economy, and where they're trying to tap into the orange economy. And, is this a step in that direction that you guys are hoping we go towards?
Definitely.
I'm going to respond to that, but I wanted to jump back a bit because Janelle spoke about young persons liking work. One of the things that I find is that we don't do a lot of job training for our young people. And so we expect them to come out of CFBC and to come out of Fifth Farm being so fully equipped to come to the workplace and have an understanding as to what is required of them, and then get uber frustrated with the young people when they just don't get it, when they just don't understand. Again, not extending that hand backwards to help our young people. So when Muriel spoke about the national internship programs earlier, I was extremely thrilled to hear about that, because I believe that job attachments and internships are very useful in terms of helping our young persons to become acquainted to the world of work, teaching them professional decorum, what it is that is expected of you. A lot of things that I learned about the professional space, I learned it when I was at university doing internships at places like that I said. So again, we have to also put a focus on that. The creative economy. The creative economy, non-traditionally, is the gig economy. Meaning, take pictures, take up my camera, take a picture, and make a little money here and there. So formalizing the creative economy certainly will create a lot of job avenues and income earning opportunities for our young persons. We already see that young persons are interested in that. If you ask a group of young persons right now, what is it you want to do? A lot of them will tell you they want to be an influencer. And I don't even understand well, I understand why that is the case, but a lot of young persons want to be influencers, and all of these non-traditional job avenues are closely related to the creative economy. So yes, we will always congratulate and applaud all of the persons who want to go into the orange economy, but I want to challenge us to go a step further from not just it being a gig, something you like to do or something that you can do, your God-given talent, but to formalize it so that it can actually be a sustained income earning opportunity for young persons. So yes.
Make it professional.
Yes.
Yes, and look for those mentors, those persons who have gone before you to assist you. And as you rightly said, when you're an entrepreneur, you work twice as hard. So persons need to be prepared for that. Yes, you're doing something that you really love and enjoy, but if you plan to make a career out of it, you have to be dedicated and willing to put in that extra work.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I am truly enjoying this conversation, but we have to take our first break. We'll continue conversations in a minute.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
Welcome back to Reflections and the Way Forward. We're having a very inspiring and exciting conversation right now about youth empowerment and leadership, not only in St. Kitts and Nevis, but throughout the wider Caribbean and indeed the world. Let's continue. Before the break, I asked about pressing issues affecting youth. I don't know if it was intentional, but no one mentioned crime. How big of an impact is crime on youth engagement, youth empowerment for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
It's a tremendous one. In my estimation, we tend to see a lot of young persons become involved in dysfunctionalism, these types of behaviors that lead to a criminal lifestyle because of hopelessness and lack of access to opportunities. And that is why earlier I spoke about ensuring that the at-risk persons, the persons who are traditionally marginalized, are a part of the conversations and that we have programs that are geared towards them in a preventative measure, not so much in a reactionary measure. We have to recognize that if persons don't believe that I can be someone, I can amount to something, I can contribute in a favorable manner, the dysfunctional lifestyle will be more captivating to them because you don't need to have any major skills, you don't need to have any major talents to be recruited to these sorts of criminal behaviors and lifestyles. So we have to continue to ensure that there are access to opportunities for young people because hopelessness is a very dangerous place to be.
I think it definitely has a huge impact because when you look at the perpetrators and the victims of crime, not just locally, but even in the region, you see that by large percent it is being done by young people, and it is definitely affecting young people. I was reading recently even in Antigua and Barbuda where the Prime Minister had begun some outreach.
Yes.
When you looked at some of the photos of who he was reaching out to, you would be very surprised that some of them don't even look over 20. And it's a very sad situation. And as Patrice said, part of it stems from hopelessness. And so I think we have to do a better job in ensuring that we don't miss those people who don't feel like they belong, because it's human nature to want to feel that sense of belonging, whether it is in your family or your community. And so if you don't feel it in one place, you're going to seek it out somewhere else.
Sure.
And so I think as a country, we have to do more to ensure that everyone feels like they belong in St. Kitts and Nevis, and a better definition of what it means to be a Kittitian and a vision, so that everyone can feel that national pride from a very early age, so that you can begin to wire your mind to know that even if I may not feel that sense of belonging in this place, there's so many other positive places where I can seek it out.
Now, Patrice mentioned that opportunities is a big part of this. Now, how can we utilize technology to bridge that gap between the at-risk or just young persons and these opportunities that are actually out there, but they're not just either seeing them, they are not hearing of them, or they're just not put in a position to attain those opportunities? How do we use technology to bridge that gap?
Well, as the communication person on the panel, I will say this: we have to make the information sexy. We have to make it appealing. We have to ensure that it is directed to our target audience. One of the things that crossed my mind while Kailoni was asking this question, and as I would have mentioned before, about the importance of engagement in civic society organizations, the importance of grassroots organizations. Our grassroots organizations look a lot like our community groups. And a lot of times our community groups and grassroots organizations look a lot like our sporting organizations and entertainment-based organizations. If it is the case that we look at it, where are a lot of our young men? What are they traditionally interested in? Football, track and field. That's where they are. I'm putting the plug here, because we really need to up our support for these types of activities and engagements, because this is what says to the young people, you have a talent, it is not an hope, you're not hopeless. There is something more than you that you can accomplish. So yes, you're a footballer, let's get disciplined, let's get you to the pros. Yes, you're a track athlete, let's get you training, let's get you a scholarship to go up to university. You can get to the Olympics in 4 years, in 8 years time. I think that what we have seen has been not so much the death, but a lack of support for a lot of our grassroots and community organizations, which will traditionally support the at-risk organizations and the at-risk youth that we're now seeing going towards dysfunctionalism. Why do I say that? Anybody who has been involved in any community organization or have the opportunity to work with at-risk youth, they will tell you sometimes you have to bring breakfast. Sometimes you have to get a school bag to help a child who is going to school who doesn't have a school bag, or assist in the purchase of whatever it is that child needs. And that is where the community comes into play. So when we starve this funding and support to these organizations, we cannot scratch our heads after to say, how did they end up here? Because we took away the importance of these organizations, and we have to reintroduce it. So my independence wish will be that we create some sort of grant or some sort of funding that will really help a lot of these community heroes and sheroes that are really helping to turn 1 or 2 young persons away from dysfunctional behavior.
Well said. Well said.
I hope somebody listens to my wish and my wish is granted.
Now, we have a very interesting panel here. We have a senior public official, we have a current deputy clerk of our National Assembly, and also current youth parliamentarian. We have a past youth parliamentarian. So I'm pretty sure all can answer this question. How can we get young people more involved in governance? Yes.
Student councils are a good start. The young people are in school for the majority of the day. And if they can be involved in the student council, they begin to understand that they are part of an organization, yes, but they're also a part of that decision-making body. As a student council, they can guide, they can present their ideas, they can implement their own projects, whether it is for fundraising or something as they would like the school to be engaged in. But for this to work, it means that the administration in the school has to partner with them, has to listen to them, guide them, and accept maybe the practical suggestions that they bring forward. So you don't object to everything that your student council says. And even if you're a student, not a member of the student council, you had a part in electing those persons to represent you. And what I would like to say going forward, and the student councils, we've realized that there have been some mimicking of what happens politically.
Of course.
And, and we may perhaps need to look at how we can change that. Because we are such a political society.
Yes.
And I would have heard a story once from a colleague. She had a relative who was running for student council, and she would have asked for money to buy cupcakes.
Oh.
Because that will make them vote for me.
Oh, wow.
And my colleague, you know, she was concerned, you know, what about your plans? You're supposed to convince them with how you can move the school forward in a positive direction, not just buy them things to try and get them to vote for you. And her response was, but that's what the politicians do.
Oh, wow.
So how do we break this illusion?
Yes.
Is it an illusion?
Disillusion. How do we get away from that, particularly from at this young age, the student council level? How do we break that trend?
For me, I would say it's a spark, even bringing it back to the original question. It's a spark in interest and a spark in knowledge, because from that small little spark, you never know where the tree could grow. And I think through the same point that Mr. Tafari is making with the student councils, through these councils you are able to find out how elections work. You find out how representation works. When I have an idea and I bring it to the person who I elected as president, and then I get to see the idea come to fruition, or I don't get to see it come to fruition, and so I know, okay, well, in the next election I'm not voting for this president again. And so I think when we brew this idea in their minds from young, it enables them to see that civic engagement and our civic processes are more than just what can I get out of it. And from there you begin that small change in that mindset, and we begin then to see it when they go to high school and they join their high school student council, and then they go to their college student government. And I think that spark as well will ensure that they then become aware of how government works, how the systems that keep the country work. Because as Patrice alluded to earlier, right now civic knowledge is very lacking in the country. And I think as citizens we have to take that collective responsibility to teach it first to our children, but to also educate ourselves as to why certain systems are the way they are and how those systems work to benefit us.
What I will say is that firstly, we are a democratic society, and it is sometimes misconstrued that being a democratic society, that the only way that you can be involved in democracy is voting. Voting is not the only way that you can be involved in democracy. It starts with the basic civic engagement and civic knowledge that Muriel spoke about. Where are you as it relates to understanding how the country runs, how government runs, what is your role? Do you have an understanding of that? Do you have an understanding as to how elections work? Do you have an understanding that you can contribute to holding your leaders accountable? Because that is one of the greater conversations that we need to have when we think about democracy and civic engagement. Are you a part of any civil society organizations? Are you considering yourself the watchdog of democracy, paying attention, being observant as to what is happening? When we ask young people questions about elections or government, I'm not interested in that. that really leaves a very sour taste in my mouth, even though sometimes I understand why. It's because we have a lot of work to do to help to explain to our young people what democracy is and how important democracy is and why they need to be involved. Years ago, the political organizations used to have very robust youth arms. So we had young Pamites, young Labour, and so I believe I have recognized that there has been a fall in these youth arms. Now, I'm not to suggest that persons should, at a very young age, assume very partisan roles as it relates to politics. But these organizations give you a very good understanding as to how the political democracy works. So again, for me, it's always back to the organizations at a very young age. We have youth parliament, we have Rotaract. Even if they can teach you how to conduct a meeting, how to write minutes, how to set a deadline, how to put your timelines together. These are all very important because governance is just not only the 11 persons that you elect to form your government, but the boards are also a part of governance. The directors, everyone is a part of governance. The leadership, that is a part of governance. So how knowledgeable are you in order to be able to hold these arms accountable?
You spoke of it's lacking. Why do you think that is? What's preventing more young people from getting involved in civic engagement or trying to take these youthful leadership roles? What do you think that is?
I think the avenues to spark the interest. Again, it goes back to sparking interest. If you don't have an interest, you can't want to participate. And you can't want to participate if that avenue to realize that some of these forums exist doesn't exist. And so I think for the organizations that do exist, more public relations as to the work of your organization, how people can become a part, and the benefits for our schools. It's teaching from a very early age, the three branches of government, who are your leaders, the government, the opposition, what are their roles, the judiciary, where do they come in, and even simple things as how do we get a social security card? How do we register to vote? These are things that we're thrown off into the deep end to figure out. And so for these departments, more education on how do you sign up for your own services so that you would see more people coming in at an even younger age. And so I think across the board, it's creating more avenues to spark the interest so that people can become involved.
For me, I recognize that there is a lack of sense of community, and that is the reason why I tend to realize that sometimes young persons are very disassociated, meaning they are very introverted, they like to be in their own space, they like to be on their tablets or on their phones. They are here presently, but they are somewhere else in the world engaging in something else. And you tend to find that they have a lot of social anxiety, how to engage with persons, how to ask a question, how to engage in a conversation as we are having now. And this is the reason why I believe that they're shying away from being a part of these organizations or being engaged civically, because they don't think that it has an impact on them. They don't have a high level of interest for them. So it's for us again to make it sexy and ensure that the young person sees it as something that they want to be involved in, and they become involved in it.
Okay, one of these active and robust organization that I know of is the Youth Parliament Association that remains active. How can this association, we have a present member, we have a former member, I don't know if Mr. Fire was ever a member, but how can this organization play a better role in nurturing future leaders here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
I leave it to the present.
I'm reaching my hand to the past.
Okay. What we recognize is that the Youth Parliament organization has often been considered the voice of the young people. Skanaipa is about 23 years old, and they have been considered the voice of the young people, primarily because we do not have a youth council. So that is the role that Skanaipa would have undertaken. Skanaipa is an exceptional and brilliant organization for any young person who is interested in becoming civically engaged and minded, and to engage in a lot of personal development. So I will always put a plug in for Sniper. However, Sniper often has a group of people that look a lot like each other. Very homogenous young persons, brilliant young persons, the best debaters, the best speakers. They look a lot like each other, which is sometimes very repulsive for young persons who might not be as articulate or as educated, and that organization has to continue to lend that support. They have youth forums where they invite young persons in to have these conversations. What are your thoughts on what's happening with the environment? What are they write position papers, they have debates, youth lounge. That's why I tell you present, you know? Because we recognize that being the voice for young persons, we can't be the sole voice. So we have to ensure that we are accumulating the voices of other young people to be able to speak on their behalf. I did well?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You still have it in you.
Well, I'll give you a spotlight now. You recently returned from a regional forum for youth parliamentarians. Can you just give us a short synopsis of that?
So the Regional Youth Parliament meets annually in the margins of the regional CPA conference, the Commonwealth Parliament Association. So it was quite an interesting experience. This would have been my second youth parliament, having participated at the 15th Regional Youth Parliament in Trinidad. And I think we also need, as we look to growing our region sustainably, more forums that allow young people across the region to come together to share their voices on issues and share with their leaders their proposals for how we can solve some of the pressing issues facing not just their countries and their communities, but even the wider region. And I also, putting in another plug for Sniper, would like to commend us for the work that we're doing to build youth parliament associations regionally, first with the establishment of ties with the Youth Parliament in Antigua, and thereafter attempting to build out youth parliament associations across the region, because we have to understand that we need to go beyond just talking, and we have to go to that level where we are giving meaningful solutions and we are creating that impact that is felt across the country and across the region.
Mr. Tafari made a very critical point earlier when she spoke of the student councils, and if their suggestions, their feedback are being taken seriously and implemented by the schools. So bring it forward now to the Youth Parliament Association. Do the work of this association, this organization, do you guys feel like it is making the impact that you guys desire?
Yes, but there's always room for improvement. I mean, there are a lot of legislation that has passed through Sniper when parliaments and governments would have been proposing legislation. They would have come for a youth perspective, and I think of immediately the seatbelts law, and more recently I know some consultation would have been had with the Attorney General when the smoking designated areas bill had come up. So there are times when we feel like, yes, our voice is being heard, we are really being taken seriously. But then there are other times where you may feel, okay, we're just talking. And so I think there is room for more consistency in ensuring that, not in every decision, because we don't want to tie up the processes, but in major decisions that will have an impact years on, you want to ensure that there is that buy-in from a wider perspective of the Federation, including the youth voice.
I would definitely say that Sniper has been making a very great impact. When I joined Sniper, it was a handful of us who, and I was in Sniper for like 13 years. When I joined Sniper, it was a handful of us that got inducted in that particular year. I'm certain somewhere between 5 and 10, if that much. But this year I had the opportunity to go to Sniper's induction ceremony, where Sniper inducted 31, sorry.
45 applied.
45 applied. See, I had one number close. 45 applied and 31 were inducted. You will hear persons saying, They have their child. I'm waiting for my child to turn 12 in order to bring them to youth parliament. Skanaipa is not this big place where we can accommodate large amounts of people, and so every year they're kind of staggering how they're introducing members. And Skanaipa has outgrown its space because so many young persons are becoming more and more interested, and parents are interested in ensuring that their young persons have that level of civic engagement. So kudos to Skanaipa. Skanaipa's birthday is in like 2 days. Kudos to Skanaipa. It has really had played a transformational role in my life, and I will always continue to extend assistance to that organization whenever it needs it. Yes.
You guys mentioned that there has been progress made in extending the voices of our young people, particularly in policy making decisions. What do we need for that to go even further? Basically to better tailor policies that promote youth engagement, promote youth enhancement, and just the overall development of young people. What's the next step? What are we missing to take it to that next level?
I think we need wider participation from a wider subset of young people. As was said earlier, we tend to always target a particular type of young person. Those persons who are already out there, who are actively involved, and we miss so many voices. And just because they're not being vocal, they're not a part of a youth group, does not mean they don't have something to contribute, something that is positive, something that can really be the deal breaker. And we need to find a way to engage these persons, whether it means that we have to go to where they are, whether it means that we have to start even earlier. We speak about education, high schools. They're in school. They have to be in school. So it's a population, it's a time when we can try and reach them. And we have to start as early as probably preschool, kindergarten, to try and teach them how to be vocal, how to share their ideas, their experiences. For example, my daughter is in 2nd grade, and apparently at her school in 2nd grade they do this program where each child on a weekly basis is given a particular role, whether it's to be the president or the secretary, and they know how to conduct the meetings, or they also have to take another role such as a news presenter or a book editor, and have to do presentations. So in this particular program, they're teaching them how to stand in front of an audience, make your presentation. They teach them how to actually sit down and prepare that presentation, and then the students provide feedback in a positive way. It's not about criticizing or putting them down. And when I heard about that program, I was like, yeah, we need more of this.
Definitely.
So it's an issue possibly that we may need a shift in our curriculum where we encourage more of these type of activities.
Yeah, we need to find a way to incorporate what we're trying to teach in the curriculum with the practical.
The curriculum needs to be developed in such a way that it prepares the young persons for the world that they are going out into. The world that Janelle went to is different from the world that I went to. The world that Muriel is in is different from the world that either of us are in. And the world that Janelle's 2nd grade daughter is in will be different. We have to engage, Muriel mentioned it earlier, in paradigm shift. One of the things I will always tell you is when you ask the question, who wants change? You get 10 hands raised. When you ask the question, who wants to change? Not as many hands are being raised. Because change is only a concept for us, but change is actual efforts and real work. We have to look at some of our laws that are very, very traditional. Young persons want to be involved in innovation. They want to be involved in the newness of things, the nuances. We have to look at some of our very traditional laws and ways of thinking. I am not going to mention them, but we know a lot of what they are. Because there is a new world out there that some persons are really fearing, but it's right there in front of our eyes, and our young persons are actively involved in a lot of these thought processes. Their beliefs are extremely different. If you sit down and you speak to a young person, you might find that a lot of young persons are interested in K-pop. K-pop is like the Korean, it's like Korean music and culture. But the young persons who are involved in K-pop and they know these Asian languages very well might not have a close relation to what is Critical and Division culture, and that is the reality of the situation. The young persons are living in a far different world than what we are living in, even though they are physically here. So we have to engage, participation, consultation, engagement, town hall sessions. You can't create policies that are for me that do not include me, that don't have my input as to what it should look like so that we can shape it. So we can't have, we have to ensure that we are engaging. People like town halls because they get to voice their opinions. So people like town halls, and we have to ensure that we are continuously creating these avenues so that persons can feel heard. It's not so much that they want to see it implemented so much, but I got an opportunity to contribute to this policy or to this legislation.
Great. I am sure you guys are enjoying this conversation just as much as I am, but we'll have to take a short break. We'll be right back.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?
And welcome back to the conversation. With me still is Tafari, Mr. Tafari, Mr. Knight, and Ms. Harris. We are speaking about youth empowerment and leadership. Let's continue this wonderful conversation. Vocational training. How can this be enhanced to provide alternative pathways for our young people? How important is this for us?
I think vocational training comes down to a shifting in mindsets, not just of students, because I think for students it's already shifted, but for parents and those in the workforce, that vocational subjects aren't just for those who aren't academically inclined. It's okay to want to have a skill. And listening to the governor of the central bank, that's something he always advocates for, skill training. And I think when we change our mindset to realize that having a skill isn't because I lack academics, having a skill is because life needs skills, I think that's when we'll realize that vocational training can play such a bigger role than it is playing right now in our society.
I'll start with a meme that I saw on social media once. And like, I'm a true millennial. So I'll start with a meme that I saw on social media once, that we're going to end up with more rappers than electricians. And in my line of work, I am the corporate communications manager for Skelec. And one of the things that Skelec has been trying to do is make these skilled and technical jobs look very attractive to our young people. We have STEM campaigns where we encourage persons to get involved in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We're going to so many job and career fairs, career days at schools, because we want the young persons to understand how important it is to pursue a skill. We need persons who are electricians, we need plumbers, we need mechanics, because you need a mechanic if you have a vehicle. When your vehicle goes bad, you need somewhere to take your vehicle to. I don't think we can ever have too many mechanics, but I think we might could have too many lawyers. But on a more serious note, we have been trying to make sure that it looks, I don't want to say sexy again, but very attractive to our young persons. When you have a skill, you will never be hungry for a day in your life, because you will be able to feed yourself. So we need persons who can do carpentry. We need persons who can do masonry work. And that is why we are encouraging you to go and pursue these endeavors. There is AVEC that teaches it. It's being taught in our high schools. There's also CFBC, and you can also become an apprentice, attaching yourself to somebody who is already in the field. Sometimes it's difficult to recruit persons for specialized areas because not many persons have these specializations and skills. So I am a firm advocate for vocational studies. If I was more talented and gifted with my hands, I probably would have done it, but I want young persons to definitely pursue that. It's not only for the persons who are not extremely academically inclined, and it's not also only for men. I can't wait until we get our first female engineer at Skelec. But we do have female engineers at Public Works. We do have female engineers at the water department. So yes, please, women, don't think that it's dirty work. If you go on Skelec's Facebook page, there is a video, a reel that we did about our vehicle maintenance department. And you will see how clean our mechanics look. It's not dirty work. So we have been trying to ensure that these areas are attractive for our young people. Please don't think it's dirty work, and there will always be money that you can make because you have a skill.
Is that a problem with the gender gap?
Yes.
Is that a major problem, particularly when we speak about young people? We tend to find more females, in my view, engaged in these civic organizations, reaching out. Do we have a shortage of men?
Wow. Do we have a shortage of men? I don't understand the question.
I ask Muriel, how do you get more young men like you to take up this leadership role?
I think it's about messaging. And again, coming back to the SPAC, I think that's going to be my example for today, the SPAC. I think we have to be able to package it in such a way that it is attractive to men as well. Because I think in some aspects I have to agree that generally you see men shying away from a lot of opportunities and a lot of these organizations. And as Patrice said, sometimes you have to go to where you'll find them. And so I think when we go to where we find them and we create that SPAC, then we can see a more balanced makeup of some of these organizations.
Do we have a shortage of men? I definitely would not agree in that. Traditionally, we will see that men take up more leadership roles, whether it is in the public and the private sector. You tend to see a lot more men CEOs, a lot more men general managers, chairmen of the board. And the prime ministers, ministers of government, PSs. That shift is already taking place. I don't think that there is a shortage of men. However, we do recognize that our men are very susceptible to a a lot of the dysfunctional behaviors that we see exhibited in our society, where we have seen an increase in crime and violence. The gangs traditionally target our young men, and that is why the organizations, the youth groups that serve our young people, we have to ensure that we continue to support them. I go back again to football and track and field, not because I'm intimately involved in them, but because I want persons to understand that there is a very direct link. The men may not be able to see themselves in a full suit, but they can definitely see themselves on the field. They can definitely see themselves participating in these sports. So we have to ensure that we are supporting them. Our men have a lot different challenges than women have in general. Men have a lot different challenges than women have in general. I don't think that we place a lot of importance on the mental health of our men. I believe that mental health is still seen as a very feminine concept, and if you ask for help, you're going to be viewed as very feminine, because why can't you have it all together? You're a man, you're supposed to be traditionally the leader, you're supposed to be able to have everything figured out, and we don't provide a lot of that support. So it's either, we are on two spectrums. You're either a very successful man, or you're a young man or a man who is engaged in dysfunctionalism, and we have to be able to bridge that gap. There is a good program that your former ministry would have. I think it's Boys Mentorship Program in Nevis. I think it's called Boys in Ties. These young men who have made it to be successful need to come back and extend that hand, because what we need to recognize is that the majority of households are single parent households led by females, by women. So a lot of times men don't have a lot of positive male role models who are there to guide them. Fathering is a concept that I love, but not always a concept that we see being executed and practiced in our society. So yes, men have different challenges. They are targeted in very different ways, but we have to support the men. So the programs need support, they need involvement, they need volunteers. We need you to get up and say, I'm going to go down to my former primary school and give a speech today. I'm going to make a donation today, because it's supposed to be about community. And when we lose the sense of community, that's where we end up with a lot of problems.
So Mr. Tafari, from a governmental standpoint, are these mentorship programs still out there? Are they still available? Do you see that they are sustained for our young people?
The Department of Gender Affairs still has the Boys Mentorship Program. It is very active and it is needed. And we perhaps need more, well, they perhaps need some more men to come forward, but we shouldn't just limit it to those formal programs. Yes. If you're a male, you're going to have some interaction somewhere, someday, with a younger male, with a boy. Whether it's the boy that you see in church, whether it's the boy that comes to your workplace, or the young man who comes to your workplace as a client. The point is that when you have these interactions with younger men, you should have a sense of responsibility to mentor, to share something, to teach that young man something, to model a particular type of behavior, so that that young man, when they're not in your presence, when they leave, they themselves can imitate what they would have seen in you, what they would have observed in you.
Great. I think Patrice mentioned it earlier. We do have an entrepreneurial spirit here in St. Kitts and Nevis. But how do we foster this among our young people? Instead, as we spoke of earlier, instead of simply, I've got to go to college, study accounts, study finance, try to get a work in the bank. How do we encourage our young people to say, hey, I can do this. This can be my business. This can be my source of income. How do we get there?
Entrepreneurship is a very new big word. It's a very new big word. But traditionally, we call it hustle, right? on a hustle.
Yes.
A bus driver, a taxi driver, the lady with her tray outside of his school, she's on a hustle. But all of these individuals are entrepreneurs. What we need to start to do is to harness this culture of hustle into a full entrepreneurial suite in terms of the support that is necessary, give the mentorship, the guidance, the funding for entrepreneurship. I will tell you that there's so many persons who are hustling but don't have a business license.
Yes.
There's so many persons who are hustling but don't even have the proper QuickBooks or accounting software because it's just about getting the money quick and fast. And with organizations such as SBDC and what is being done through the creative economy, a lot of government agencies are working with these small business owners to ensure that entrepreneurship is not just on the tip of the tongue, but it's something that can be actualized. From what I gather, there's still a lot of support that is needed. And we have to ensure that we don't lose young persons because the entrepreneurship is too hard. It's too hard to get all of these things done. We have to provide the support that is necessary. So turning the hustle and the gigs from the creative economy, it's the gig economy, into the formalized economy where you register, you follow the particular policies and procedures that businesses should have.
Yeah, then there should be incubators, there should be opportunities for them to get that startup capital. And I know in the past there was a program, Junior Achiever,
Yes.
where the young students started a business, and I believe there's a attempt to bring it back.
Okay.
So we should be hearing some more about that shortly, which is an excellent program because we do have some young entrepreneurs out there who are still actually in school.
Yes, selling
And we
ice
need
pops.
to provide that. they make lip gloss and
Yes.
earrings. Yeah, young people
And
doing.
keychains.
The guy who paints the rocks.
Yes.
Yeah. There are some young people doing some amazing things.
So
And we need to ensure that they have that support around them
Yes.
to grow their business.
Because it's never for a lack of talent, It's never for a lack of talent. It's for a lack of support and availability of resources.
and this is not just on the government, this is also government private sector.
Yes, definitely.
Great. You had a comment?
No.
Oh, sorry. Now, social media is a big thing. You mentioned the influencers. We have it more and more. Now, how can we use social media, use technology to basically stymie some of these social ills that we're having, that we're seeing around, using it positively, because it can be a very negative place.
Yeah, I'd say social media has always been a double-edged sword.
Yes.
It's something, if used right, it can be an amazing tool. And
Yes.
my mind goes back to the portal that they opened between New York and Ireland, and how
yes.
within a week people are already doing all kind of crazy things and they had to close it down. So it's like, it's this tool for good that if done right, it can be an amazing changing tool for people, a window into the wider world. But if used wrongly, its impact is very negative, especially when we return to the conversation of mental health and how people can use social media for cyberbullying and for hacking and for scamming. And so I think what we have to do is zero in on those positivities of social media, the connections, the networking, the exposure that it can give you as a small business owner, or even as a young advocate, the exposure it gives you. And it comes in part through training our young people to use it responsibly, to show them the negative ills that can arise from social media, and also to be used as by some people as an example of what it is to use social media wisely and through positivity. And I think then we can definitely harness the positive growths that can be gained from social media.
Social media has made the world flat, meaning it has leveled the playing field. We all have access to the same opportunities, or at least even awareness. We have to ensure that social media is used, because it's never so much the use but the misuse of the tool that is the difficulty. We have to encourage and support our young people to use it. Small businesses, market yourself. send it, push, sponsor your content, send it out. Our young people use it as a tool to become aware as to what is taking place. We see a lot of effort both in the public and private sector to use social media for information sharing. As Muriel would have mentioned, he can tell you what's happening in Antigua, and I'm certain, but he probably found it out on the website too, but I'm certain that social media is the place where he saw this information about what is taking place in Antigua. We can use social media to share opportunities, to simplify content, to put it into bite-size and chunk-size formats where it is easier to digest. We can use social media to change the landscape as to how we communicate with persons, not only by putting out press releases, but by creating videos, creating reels that are so popular, creating TikToks. Young people love TikToks. They love challenges, and it's really always a challenge being in an organized sector as to how do we reach the young people. And you can't reach the young people without asking the young people where they are, and they are on social media.
So true. Now we see out there using a lot of the social media. We see out there around the world many youth movements, particularly when it comes to human rights, the environment. How can we learn anything from some of these world youth oriented movements out there that we can utilize and use right here in St. Kitts and Nevis?
This is a thesis. Yeah. This is a thesis right here. It was one of my topics when I did my bachelor's. Social media again made the world flat. You no longer needed the likes of an organized media company, media entity to get your messaging out. You no longer needed anything organized to mobilize people. We see groups being placed on social media. Can create a group, the persons who are interested become engaged in it. They follow it, they like it, they find out where the movement is taking place. Because the cell phone is so inconspicuous, you use it to tape, you use it to produce your entire film. You use it to design your flyers. You use it to share information in WhatsApp groups, in broadcasts, in channels. It is so much easier to mobilize people now through social media than it was in the past. And you not only mobilize persons who are physically near you, but you mobilize persons anywhere in the world. If we look at all of these movements, the Me Too movement, even all of these climate justice movements that we're seeing now, social media has been the platform for their eruption, so to speak. And that is why we cannot ever take social media for granted. When I hear people say they're not on social media, I say, okay, so how do you know what's going on? And they always get mum, because it's really the place where you find out everything. But we cannot discredit some of the very negative impacts that social media has, which is misinformation and disinformation. When we look at all of the fake pages and the bots and all of this intentional spreading of wrong information to influence behavior, then we have to recognize that we have to engage in some rationalization when it comes to how we use social media. So again, double-edged sword, as Muriel said, but a very, very crucial tool.
I think, Muriel, you pointed, you touched on the issue earlier of regional collaboration between, especially among young people. Now, with St. Kitts and Nevis and most of the regional territories being so small in size, do you think more of this is needed in terms of promoting our advocacy endeavors from youth, climate change, climate justice? Do you think more of this collaboration is needed throughout the region?
Definitely, because one voice shouting in a room doesn't create much of an impact. But when we all shout together and we all shout the same thing, we all sing the same song, the impact that you can have is unimaginable. And I think the more that we recognize that as young people in our country, in our communities around the region, we are facing the same issues, we can come up with the same solutions, perhaps we're even proposing the same solutions. I think the more that we recognize that together we can have a louder voice, I think the greater the impact we will have and the faster we will see change and solutions to those issues.
Okay.
When we have regional collaboration, it fosters what we call best practices. So, for example, our ministry has very great programs, Project Viola, Boys Mentorship Program. Other Caribbean islands can look at these programs and say, look at the success rate of this program. This is a best practice that we want to implement in our country. We also can do the same because other islands get certain things done right that we might not particularly get done right. And that is why we cannot be isolated. We're called the Caribbean community for a reason, and it is expected that we are going to share what works best for each of us for the re-implementation in another island so that we can see that particular level of success. So I will always promote and support these regional collaborations.
Okay. So as our conversation winds down, how can our young people here in St. Kitts and Nevis contribute more to the global challenges that we are facing, climate change, sustainable development? How can we, the small territory, 68 square miles, plus our brothers and sisters in Nevis, how can we contribute to that global conversation?
Get involved.
Yeah.
2 words simply, get involved.
Get involved. Plain and simple.
And by your own individual actions, we're talking climate change. What you do on a day-to-day basis, you may feel like you're just one person, you can't make a difference.
Certainly, back to the climate change conversation, in order for us to see a lot of movement and growth and development, it has to have personal responsibility and personal engagement, personal participation and personal commitment. We're not going to wish any issue away. We're not going to wake up one day and the climate change is solved, our challenges are solved, youth unemployment is solved, the food insecurity is solved. We're not going to wake up and that happens. We have to make that collective effort to play a role in the change that we want to see. Again, remember, who wants change? Everybody raises his or her hand. Who wants to change? Very few hands go up, and we have to make that change. We have to contribute to the change that we want to see. So young people, stop shying away from being a part of the conversations. Stop thinking that it doesn't have an impact on me, so I am not interested in it and I have nothing to say. I want money and all of these things that young people will tell you when you try to engage them. There is a real world that has opportunities that you can benefit from, but you can't benefit from them if you remain in your corners and you continue to self-isolate. You have to go and knock on the doors, ask the questions, become involved, and build a personal brand for yourself so that people know who you are. It's very important.
It's a powerful message. And so as we wrap up, I will ask our other 2 guests to give our young people a final message.
My message for young persons would be become involved. Try and make a difference in your own little corner, and eventually it will spread. Don't shy away. Don't think that you can't make an impact. Each of us have something to contribute. We're all given certain gifts, certain talents. Use it for the good that you can do. Both for yourself and for others.
Yeah, my message would be simple: to ensure that you never allow anyone to make you feel like you don't belong. As a young person, you have every right to be in the room, you have every right to give your opinion because you are a part of the country, you are a part of your community, and so your voice matters. And so allow yourself to, as we say in Skyniper, take up space and allow yourself to shine. You may need to give yourself grace because don't expect that you can go from 0 to 100 overnight. It's a growing process. Always allow yourself to learn. As the motto of the best primary school on the Federation is, learn a little every day. And so through that learning, you can empower yourself not just to feel more confident, but to have that greater impact that you want to see and that change that we need in our Federation.
Kaloni, I think it's also important, I'm sorry if I'm getting to wrap-ups, but I think it's also important to send a message to the generations that preceded this present young generation. Extend your hand. Dress over, not out of the picture. Just dress over so that the two of us can be in the picture. Extend your hand, because oftentimes when young persons are placed into positions, regardless of how entitled you might think that he or she is, they cannot do it without the support of the generations that came before them. And you have to think about the type of support that you would have wanted when you were in a particular role as a young person when you first started, and be that type of support that you wish that you had, because young people cannot do it on their own. Despite what they say to you, they cannot. So extend your hand, allow the opportunity for them to come in, to assist with the program. They have very innovative ideas, and don't think that they're pushing you out of the door. You might have to start to create your own space and your own avenue, because I know sometimes we over-associate ourselves with whatever our positions are. We think that it's all that we are. So when you leave an organization or you leave a position, you're figuring out, what do I do next? Who am I? But please extend your hand. Think about the transition process so that the work can continue. Do not be threatened by young people, please.
And I think that is a perfect way for us to end this special edition of In Focus, dubbed Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. I want to thank our panelists, Ms. Janelle Tafari, Mr. Muriel Knight, Ms. Patrice, I hope I said it right, Ms. Patrice Harris. Thank you for joining us. Due to a sitting of the National Assembly on September 18, there will be no In Focus. However, you can tune in on October the 2nd for the next edition. Thank you. See you soon. Same place, same time.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 41 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. On this edition, it's Youthquake, empowering tomorrow's leaders.
Would you stand up and see your country dying?